Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Happy Father's Day. For those of you who are celebrating that day, congratulations. And my name's Jason Mossman, and let me just share a little bit about myself because they told me it was a good thing to do with you guys. So, that's not going to work. I'll break your equipment right off the bat. I live in Northern Kentucky, which I guess this is still considered part of Northern Kentucky, but Covington. I live about 2 minutes off the river, not in a van, if you're a Saturday Night Live fan, but live in a house. My family and I, who they'll be here in the next service, but bought a 1890s home and renovated it and been there the last few years. Have 3 kids, all now in middle school, high school age, so feeling very old. My last one just got out of elementary this last May. 3 kids, 1 dog, 1 wife. I love the Kentucky Wildcats, for those of you who bleed blue, yes, all right. So I did that for partial, that you'll like me. But us northern Kentuckiers do bleed blue. So just for those who tend to move, I have a lot of family in East Kentucky, and they always wonder if we do. Yes, very much so. Huge Reds, Bengals, all that kind of stuff. Arts, I love the arts. I love music, movies, plays, do a lot of traveling, all that kind of stuff. For a living, I do a bunch of different things, but mostly I actually am a faculty at NKU, and I teach a lot of communication courses. So if I am not good at communicating, don't tell my students, first of all, and then second of all, don't tell me really afterwards. Just let me keep fooling myself that I do a good job with this. But I'm glad to be here today, and one of the things I'm going to promise you, if you don't get much out of this today, here's what I tell everyone when I speak, and I've done this for years now, because what I've found in the church sometimes is, I think unintentionally, good-natured people want, when we come to church, those who are leading, especially who are speaking, they want you to feel a connection to God. They want you to sense God's presence and all that. And so sometimes they'll do things or say things or work things in to get your emotions riled up or get your feelings. And years ago, a decade ago, more than that, when I spoke, anytime I spoke, I decided I'm human, and I know that might be a factor in what I say or do sometimes. So I want every person who comes to church to experience 2 things. When I start speaking, to hear the words of the church. And when I finish speaking, to hear the words of Christ. And so what I mean by that is, when I'm with you, and I'll be back in July doing some times here as well, I'll always open up and we'll share the Apostles' Creed together. And I'll close, the last words you hear will be the Lord's Prayer. Not my words, but His. So that if you didn't get anything out of today, you've got the foundation of the church, and you've got the prayer that our Father has taught us to pray. All right? So if you'll be willing to do that with me, maybe somewhere in the middle, you'll hear something that you enjoy as well. So let's share together the Apostles' Creed that will be up on the screen. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, and in Jesus Christ, His only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended into hell. The 3rd day He rose again from the dead. He ascended into heaven and sitteth at the right hand of God, the Father Almighty. From thence He shall come to judge the living and the dead. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and life everlasting. Amen. Now, probably some of you say, whoa, I don't know if I believe in the Holy Catholic Church. Just to let you know, when this creed was created, there was only one church, and that was the Catholic Church. So it was all one called the Catholic Church, and then Protestantism in 1500 and all that. So we won't get into a history lesson, but just some of you who had a question on that. So today is Father's Day, right? Now, I understand Father's Day for some people can be very good and can be very bad, all right? And so what I want to focus on today is God the Father as the father role, all right? And so when you think of a father, and I'm, like I said, I teach college, so I'm a very back and forth question and answer, and I'm not going to do that this morning necessarily, but I'm going to give you a chance to answer this question real quick with just a couple of people around you. I'm going to make you actually interact with someone today. I know that's like, oh no, don't do that, church. But I'm going to actually ask you just to turn around right next to you and answer this question. Very easy question. If you wanted to create a father, or you had a good father, or you've seen good fathers, what are some of the characteristics of a good father? All right? So take just about 60 seconds here. Turn around, say hi to that person that you kind of shook hands with earlier but didn't really want to talk to him. Now talk to him a little bit and just say, what are some characteristics of a good father that you've seen or had in your life? Oh, there should be way more talking. There we go. All right, throw out some real quick. What were some things for those extroverts who don't mind yelling in a crowd? Provider. Loving. Encouraging. Patient. Kind. Oh, some of you just do 1 Corinthians 13 and start, listing all those things. All right. Yeah. Provider, protector, life giver. Those fathers did have a little bit to do with bringing that life into the world. All those different things. And then when you get into God, the Father, you get those big omni ones, right? The omnipotent one, the one that's all-powerful, then omniscient, which is all-knowing. And then there's that third one, the omnipresent one. And that's the one I want to talk to you today. That is God the Father, like we just prayed in the Apostles' Creed, as omnipresent, as being with us, as being all over the place, all right? There's a story I just read earlier this week. It's real short. It says, one Sunday morning, a lecturer in a theological college was sharing a seat on a train with a small boy as he went to church. The boy was holding his Sunday school lesson in his hand. The lecturer sitting beside him was interested and asked, in a friendly way, a question of the young boy. He said, now this is one of those smart, guys like, I'm not smart, but, one of those titles of a professor type things. He said, can I ask you a question, young boy? He said, sure. Tell me, thinking to have a little bit of fun with the kid, where is God? If you can tell me where God is, I'll give you an apple. The boy looked up at the theological lecturer and promptly replied, I'll give you a whole barrel of apples if you can tell me where God is not. See, we're going to discuss God being with us today, and we're going to look at some scriptures, and we're going to fly through these scriptures because I just want you to see a bunch of different places in the Bible where the Father is with us. But I want to take a look today at not just the Father being with us like we typically talk about, but beyond that in the sense of how everyday lives, every moment of our lives, the weird things in our lives, the Father is with us. And maybe it might paint a better picture for some of you for Father's Day and even in your walk with the Father. So Ephesians 4:6. We'll start out by saying one God and Father of all, who is over all, through all, and in all. Psalms 46:1 says, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Isaiah 57:15. This is one of my favorites of all these. For this is what the high and exalted one says, he who lives forever, whose name is holy. I live in a high and holy place, but also with the one who is contrite and lowly in spirit, to revive the spirit of the lowly, and to revive the heart of the contrite. I like that because I feel like I'm the lowly many, many times, most of the time. And so to know that God the Father is not just high up there, but he's with us, lowly people. Psalms 139 says, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. Isaiah 7:14. We read these next two a lot Christmas time. And they will call him Emmanuel, which in Matthew 1:23, again, it says, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. You see, the Father is with us. That's pretty cool this morning. That the creator of this world, the God of this world, is with us. And I don't just mean that he's with us in good nature and wants the best for us and wants things in our lives. No, he's with us. He's with us and reveals himself all around us. And most of the time, at least in my life, I don't notice it a lot. You see, I notice it when God reveals himself in creation. That's the one that most of us feel good. When we see the Appalachian Mountains or the Rocky Mountains, we say, oh, yeah, God, this is incredible, beautiful. Thank you, God. And that is. And we go to and I'm going to the ocean here in a week or so. Sorry. And I know when I'm there, I'll be like, oh, God, these waves, immense ocean, I can't see anything but this water. You're this great creator. And we even do that for the majestic things that are man-made, like the Great Wall of China. If you ever see that or be there, I haven't got a chance, but I've talked to people who are there, and it just says it's just endless. It feels like it's endless. It just, for as long as you can see, this incredible wall just goes from miles and miles and miles. Or the pyramids. Or if my youngest daughter who's here is fascinated with Paris, and she got all this Paris stuff, and the Eiffel Tower is like all over her room and in the hallway and stuff, so I can't ever get away from the Eiffel Tower. But it's these majestic things that man has created. We see even his beauty in the creation in that. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, nature is too thin a screen. The glory of the omnipresent God bursts through it everywhere. He burst through it. But I don't want to focus so much on the beautiful, majestic things today. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think we do pretty good at understanding that God created those or he's in those. I want to talk a little bit more about the things in our lives that we might not always attribute to God or recognize as God. For instance, maybe the look of a classic 55 Harley Davidson going down the road. Or maybe you're a Mustang guy, Shelby GT, 500 horsepower. Rev that baby up. There's some beauty in that, isn't there? Maybe a wedding album from your parents or friends. You just open it up, and all of a sudden you start seeing these pictures. And most of the time, people are happy in their wedding albums. Not always, but most of the time, you sense this joy. Or maybe it's just sharing a meal with a longtime friend and sharing together over the meal. Or maybe the Father's in the beauty of being out on your porch or deck, or if you have one of the two, in the early morning hours, and you're just sipping that nice coffee. Although I'm not coffee, more mine would be Diet Mountain Dew. But you sit there and it's like, oh, for about 10 minutes, I just have this nice feeling here. You see, a lot of times we don't attribute all those things to the Father being with us. But see, God, as the Father, wants us to enjoy this life. And he doesn't want us to always separate everything. We tend to separate stuff, which is really not a good thing. And so I tell my kids, when you're with your volleyball team, my oldest is a big volleyball player. When you're with your volleyball team, that's the Father with you in their lives. They're just as much a church family as the people in this room. And sometimes we don't think of that. Like, if I'd say, hey, who's your church family? You'll say, oh, and you'll start naming off people who come to church on Sunday morning. But see, even if some of those people on her volleyball team don't claim Christ as Lord or God as their Father, they still are exhibiting attributes of the Father every time they step on that court or every time they start warming up Or my daughter and my other daughter in her acting stuff. I say, treat those that you're on stage with and that you're practicing with and you're warming up with as experiencing the Father with them. It's not church, as in like what we think of this church, but it's just as powerful. You see, we tend to compartmentalize God a lot of times. And, you know, for all the things that are wrong in some other nations and countries and all that, Judaism and Islam understand this. They don't separate their religion like we do in America or in Western civilization. They don't say, okay, all right, church is on Sunday morning from 9:30 to 10:32 or whatever the schedule said on there. And we don't do that because at an early age, if I'm a Jew or a Muslim, I learned that this is my life. My faith is my life. So it's in the food I eat, in the people I talk to, and in the fashion that I wear, and the actions that I do, and the places I go. It's everything. It's ingrained in them. They don't know how. They don't even understand the concept of slicing up like a pie. But for some reason here in America and in Western culture in general, we slice it up. Like, okay, we'll do church. And if I'm singing a Christian song, or listening to Christian music, or if I'm praying before my meal, if I go to a Bible study, or whatever, then I'm doing church. But now I go to work. And that's work. Nah, that's not how God intended life to be. He wants and is present through all that. But it's hard to see that. It's hard to become aware of that. So how do we start to become aware of that? I'm going to throw a picture up here. I don't know if anyone's a car person. I'm not really a car person, but I got this crazy machine here, all right? Anyone know what this is? Pretty close. Anyone ever seen this? I've only seen 2 of them around within like a 2 or 3 hour radius here. It's a Dodge Raider. Yeah, is it written on, if you want to see that? It's a Dodge Raider. They only made them for 2 or 3 years in the 80s. Mine's an 87 Dodge Raider with 200 and almost 60,000 miles on it. All right? I've lived a bunch of different places. I've lived in Illinois, South Carolina, several places in Ohio, Columbus mostly. But while I was living in Columbus, I had this mechanic who had this just brick little, it didn't even have a sign on it. All right? It was just a brick garage thing. And he stuffed just a bunch of cars in there. I don't think the guy ever got paid. He did a barter system. He just would be like, all right, I'll take your old car and, I'll fix your new one kind of thing. Because he just had cars all over the place in this old brick building and out in the yard and stuff. Well, he had this one out there one day. And I'd been looking for something. I'd doing a lot of traveling at the time, and I wanted something just to drive around town, kind of cheap, but unique. I just like that. I like stuff that I don't see a lot of times. So I started talking to this guy about this car, and I was fascinated with it because it's a Jeep, but first of all, it might go 50 miles an hour. I've been on the interstate with it a couple times. Matter of fact, where I bought it at, I'll tell you the story, but it was about 2 hours, however far Grayson is from here. That's where I found an hour and something. Yeah. All right. But anyways, I saw this one in Columbus with this guy, and he kept saying, yeah, I'll sell it to you, I got to fix it up, Well, I ended up moving out of Columbus. I called him after I decided when I moved into Northern Kentucky, back to Northern Kentucky. I grew up in Northern Kentucky, but I said, hey, I'm really interested in still that car. Would you be willing to sell it to me? And he said, oh, no, someone else came and paid me, gave me another car, and I gave him that one. I was like, So I started looking for one. Because one, they're cheap, all right? They're not that expensive. They're 1980s. They're not considered like the traditional classic some other Jeep might be. But I found one in Grayson, Kentucky. So I drove down with a friend to pick it up. And I'd never driven it before. I've never actually drove the car. But I liked the way it looked. So I got in, started driving around. I was like, oh, this is cool. It'd be fun just to putt around town and stuff like that. Didn't realize the little 4-cylinder was a challenge to drive. At least back from Grayson, Kentucky to Cincinnati, basically. And I didn't think I was going to make it. Because every time I go down the hill, I'd be like, put it in neutral, I'd be like, yahoo! be flying. As soon as I'd have to go back up a hill, it was like 25, 30. I had people on double way, like, honking, get out of my way. I was like, I'm sorry, I can't get the thing to move. You want to push it? Whatever. But I realized quickly, this isn't the reason I bought it, but the byproduct of this Dodge Raider was this. It made me start slowing down. I started taking the back roads. Stopped getting off the main highways. Stopped being in a hurry to get everywhere. I knew if I was driving the Raider, it was going to take me a little while to get there. So I was like, hey, I'm either going to be late or I need to leave early, one of the two, so I just warn you. And what started happening in my life was I started to become aware of the Father in different places and things because I started slowing down. And I started slowing down not just in my driving, which some of you need to do, by the way, but I started slowing down in other things because I found that I was starting to miss out, or I would realize, I've probably been doing it for a long time, but I was missing out on life. I was missing out on the small things. I was missing out on stuff. And I realized that things matter. Little things matter. Because I really started to learn that that's where God the Father was showing up. And I was missing. I was waiting for him to be in all these big things. And he was showing up in the little things saying, I'm here. I'm here. I want you to see me. So I started to slow down and finding meaning in the moment, enjoying people more, enjoying mysteries more. I didn't have to try to solve everything. It was all right not to know all the answers. I had less answers. There's a Don Henley song that says, the more I know, the less I understand. And the older I've got, the more I realize that it's true. You see, the things matter. And what I was starting to realize is that the Father wants to be one with us everywhere. And a lot of people, including me, could be very God-focused, could be reading a lot of the Bible, could be praying a lot, could be able to quote scriptures, could be able to sing songs, listen to Christian music, all that stuff. But they weren't actually able to see God the Father. They were blinded because the ability to touch him, to taste him, to feel him in our everyday wasn't there. See, there's a quote from Henry Nouwen from the Life of the Beloved book, and the whole book is about the idea that you are the beloved of God, that you are his chosen child. And the end quote will be up here, but let me read a little bit more. It says, I've called you by name. From the very beginning, you are mine, and I am yours. You are my beloved. On you my favor rests. I've molded you in the depths of the earth, knitted you together in your mother's womb. I've carved you in the palms of my hands and hidden you in the shadow of my embrace. I look at you with infinite tenderness and care. For you, with a care more intimate than that of a mother for a child. I've counted every hair on your head and guided you at every step. Wherever you go, I go with you. Wherever you rest, I keep watch. I will give you food that will satisfy your hunger and drink that will quench all your thirst. I will not hide my face from you. You know me as your own, as I know you as my own. You belong to me. I am your father. I am your mother, your brother, your sister, your lover, your spouse. Yes, even your child. For wherever you are, I will be. Nothing will ever separate us, for we are one. You see, I've noticed the Father being with me a lot more lately. When I was watching a matinee, and I was the only movie attender there. I've noticed the Father when I'm eating with the family. When I've been reading and kind of stalking people on Facebook, I've been noticing it. When I'm taking in my daughter's volleyball game. When I'm filling out an application. When I'm checking out at the grocery store, paying for my groceries. Seeing a tree bloom that we just planted. In the smell of cinnamon. In the sound of this old car starting up that's driving me crazy. in our neighborhood needs a new muffler. Starting to sense even that, God. The taste of a glazed donut. Feeling lonely when I'm driving at night. When I was skipping rocks with my daughter in the currents of the Ohio River. In the smile of my neighbor who's an agnostic, doesn't even believe in God. When I got an emoji text the other day. Some of those. The sound of my kids playing together. The feel of a new shirt. The hug from a friend. The softness of my bed. The ray of sunlight. A rainbow that I just saw this week. Barbecue with my cousins. Watching my daughter act on stage. The touch of my wife's skin. The memory of a past trip. Standing next to a redwood tree. Crack of the bat from a baseball game. Being denied something I really wanted. The cuddle of my dog. The walking in the morning breeze. The listening to the wood crackle in a fireplace. The innocence of a toddler. The pride of a recent graduate. The pain of my friend's marriage ending. The arrival of a miracle baby. The bliss of one of my favorite bands in concert earlier this week. A clean house. Fresh cut grass. An assignment being done. Listen to the stories of these police officers I work with this week. The actions of our country. The picture of my college bests getting together. Minimalizing possessions and selling them off. Writing a note, mailing it to an estranged person I'd been with. And asking for forgiveness. God's presence in the sound of sea lions barking. In the anticipation of an upcoming new adventure, which on the beach. Experiencing a new day. Making plans for this family trip. And losing my father 17 years ago. It's August 31st, 2000. My dad was 50 years old. Young man. 50 is the new 25, right? I think something like that. It's the new 30. I'm hoping, because I see that real quick. My dad had liver cancer. Now, I know a lot of you have gone through cancer with people, and it's just an ugly disease. It really is. There's really no beauty in it. But there was beauty in my dad as he was dying of liver cancer. And liver cancer is one of those that's pretty much, once you get it, it's very few people ever rebound from it because it just permeates everything. And one of the things it does is it makes your organs shut down and you become jaundiced in the last few weeks of life. So my dad had been a pretty big man most of his life, 6'3", 6'4", been upwards of closer to 3 bills early in my life, but had gotten diabetes when he was in his 40s, and so had lost a lot of weight. So he's in pretty good shape the last 4 or 5 years of life, but still a little over 200 pounds, 6'3", like I said. By the time he had passed, he was, we didn't weigh him, but I mean, you could see his bones, through his skin. His legs just looked like pencils. So he's probably down in the 100 range, probably, if I were to guess. And what he asked me as a son was to say, I don't want people to see me like this. I want them to remember me like I was. So please don't let anyone come over except for his pastor and his closest friend. That was really all he wanted other than immediate family. Immediate family. And so I had a lot of these people when they started hearing that, my dad was close within days, hours maybe. They wanted to come over, and because my dad we had a hospital, so he was at the house. And they wanted to come over and say their goodbyes, and, good stuff. But because I was the oldest son and because my dad had asked me to do this, I had to tell him no. And a lot of family members, I had to just say, I'm sorry. I understand what you want, but this was my dad's wishes, and I can't allow that. So he died August 31st, and it was Labor Day weekend, so we kind of had to push the funeral and visitation, all that, till after Labor Day. So I think he died on Friday morning, and then we had to push it all the way till Tuesday or Wednesday or something like that. But anyways, couldn't do much over the break. And during that time, it started to be really tense with my family and some of the friends because they started to attack at me because I'd not let them see him before he passed. And so they were blaming me and telling my mom how wrong I was. And my mom was in not the best shape. And so she was saying, yeah, I think they're right. You should have done that. You should have let them. And so I was feeling pretty alone. My wife was in South Carolina where we were living at the time, so she was flying up. And it was just a long 4 or 5 days. I was really just, not only just losing my dad, but it was just really tough. But I was the one planning the funeral, doing all that, putting it all together and stuff. And so that day of before the funeral, we had a large, people come to do the visitation. And so the church was set up where there was one row in the middle, and you had the two big sides. And so people just come, and it was a long church, one of those kind of longer churches. And so I was standing up front with my mom and my sister and some people off the side here. And so when people would come, I would just basically shake their hand, say, thank you very much for coming, and pass them along to the next person. I wasn't seeing who was here. When you got to right up there, that's when I recognized you. And I was pretty beat up by this time, but I had not really grieved much, not really done much, just trying to figure out how to make it through this. Because from planning the funeral to just being attacked by a lot of people. So I was shaking hands. Turned after shaking one of these hands, after about 45 minutes of doing this, turned, and right in front of me was my best friend from college who lived about 4 hours away. He wasn't a friend of my dad's. I mean, he'd met my dad and stuff, but he wasn't there for my dad. Who is he there for? Me. I turned. I can remember this as vividly as I can right now. He looked at me in the eyes. I crumbled. I mean, I became like a 6-month-old baby. My legs buckled. He grabbed me, just bear hugged me, and just sat there. And I bawled. And it was in that moment that I realized the Father's with me. He's with me and one of my best friends, because this guy just came to be there for me. And in that moment, I could just be safe in someone's arms that I knew that cared for me. You see, that's who the Father is for us today, too. You might have had a ridiculously bad father. And the band's going to come here in just a second. You might have had a ridiculously bad childhood. I don't know. You might say, I don't even know my father. Or you might have had the world's greatest father. I don't know where you're at. But what I do know, the Father is with us today. And all those big, long list of things, he's much more there with you. But it's tough for us to start recognizing that sometimes, because we don't understand that God loves us that much, that he's in all these little things around us, and it's God. It's not just this cool car that we see, or it's not just this nice thing. It's not just this nice whatever. It's the Father saying, I'm here. Today we're going to close with the Lord's Prayer, and then the band will sing. But I share with you that today to say, if you, whatever feelings you have about Father's Day, I hope that today, the feeling of understanding that the Father is with you, maybe as you just walk out the door and you see Taco Bell, and you're like, oh, I love Taco Bell. Did you just know the Father's with you? Because he is. And he's there a lot more than we recognize. And my prayer for you today is that you begin to pray like I do each day and say, God, show me. Let me not be blind anymore to see how you're with us.